Michelle Rodriguez, and the topic I chose to talk about and research is diabetes and how genetics plays a part in the risk of getting this disease. So, first, I wanted to talk about why I chose this topic. My family um, has been greatly impacted by diabetes from generation to generation. My grandparents had diabetes. I had an aunt who passed away, who got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 2. And due to that, she began suffering from kidney failure around her 20s. My dad also he has type 2 diabetes right now, and it's just been a rough journey for him, just trying to change his diet and his lifestyle. I also think that diabetes is just very important. It is one of the top 10 diseases in the world, which means that we should know more about it and we should, educate more people about it. When it comes to genetics, there's just a big role that race and culture play in it, because it's not just the way our genes, like our gene expression, but also um, the way our culture revolves around the way we eat, the way we live, can greatly impact just how risky it is to get this disease. And I also think it's very important to know about diabetes and genetics, because it can help prepare us for the future in case we do end up getting this medical disease. It would be really good to kind of know what to expect and hopefully prevent the disease, if anything. So these are some of the questions I want to research and just know more about. So there's how does race or ethnicity impact the risk of getting type 1 and type 2? There's how our gene expression impacts the risk of getting diabetes. I also want to know more about how culture impacts the lifestyle and increasing the chances of diabetes. I want to know how big of an impact is genetics, and how if we can prevent diabetes through genetic recombination. I also wanted to add on that I did want to know more about just how race and ethnic backgrounds affect it, because I am of Latinx culture, and so in my culture we don't really talk much about medical conditions or diseases. So it was just it's rare to talk about it sometimes, and so I think it's important that because we are more prone to getting this disease, that we should know more about it. So as of right now, 2022, 537 million people have diabetes, and it is predicted that this number could increase to 783 million by 2045. So it's very alarming for sure. So I guess a little bit of background about what is diabetes mellitus. So it's basically a chronic disease where either the pancreas does not produce enough insulin, or when the body cannot effectively use insulin, the insulin that it produces. So there are the main three common types are type 1 diabetes, which relates to, it's usually more prone in children. Um, sorry. Diabetes is known as like an autoimmune disease because it occurs when your immune system mistakenly attacks the insulin producing cells in your pancreas. Now, when it comes to type 2 diabetes, it is more common in adults, and it's actually accounts for 90 to 95% of diabetes cases. So usually, type 2 diabetes, we still don't exactly know the cause of why, but it is usually due to health and environmental factors like obesity, or just not being in physically active. There is also the case of, the family history and um, any like race and ethnic background. And gestational diabetes is it comes when someone who is pregnant gets high levels of blood sugar in their system. So a little bit of history. In 1552 BC, that's when they first became known some symptoms of diabetes in Egypt. And it was just interesting because they just documented like there was just like frequent urination and rapid weight loss. So that's when they first thought of like this mysterious disease. And then in ancient India, people use ants to test for diabetes. So if the ants like to drink the urine, they believed that there was sugar in the urine. And if there wasn't any sugar, then the ants wouldn't really care for it. Later on, centuries passed, and there was people known as water tasters, which they were literally told to taste this urine that people suspected that had sugar in it. And that's when it also became known as the word mellitus, because mellitus means honey. Um, so yeah, it's just really interesting. And it wasn't until the 1800s that scientists developed these chemical tests to detect the presence of sugar in the urine. So these are some of the effects of diabetes. There is eye damage, of course. It does increase eye diseases, such as cataracts and glaucoma. It also increases the chances of getting heart disease, such as stroke, high blood pressure, and narrowing blood vessels. There could be a high increase in the kidney disease, which may require dialysis or kidney transplant. There's problems in the skin, so it could lead to very much bacterial and fungal infections. And there's a slow healing process. So like if someone gets like a cut or a blister, it can cause very serious infections, and it will be hard for them to heal quickly. There's also pancreas. So like it could increase the chances of getting pancreatitis, which is the inflammation of the pancreas. And it becomes very complex because it's not able to break down it's not able to help break down food. um so it can really lead to a lot of like organ damage, and of course that can also lead to the digestive system, so it can cause problems with nausea, vomiting, and constipation. There's also many other effects of diabetes, like there can be dementia actually. So type 2 diabetes can increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease, um, because of the poor control of blood levels. So it affects just like the memory and thinking skills. And yeah, just there can be a lot of nerve damage, which can destroy nerves, and you can start feeling more like numbness and burning, and or even just having like loss of any feeling usually. So yeah, there's a lot of organs that can be affected by diabetes. So here I wrote down the top risk factors, which are basically the most common ones that we see affect the risk of getting diabetes. So there's obesity, of course. There's the age factor. There's family history, sedentarism, and the ethnic background. And then I listed some of the treatments, which is just being more active, going outside, getting more exercise, eating healthy foods, just applying more of like vegetables, more fruits. There's insulin shots. This is especially for type 1 diabetes people. that require that like extra insulin each day. And there's the managing stress that can also help reduce the levels of diabetes. However, I noticed that there isn't really a treatment for genetic factors. As far as I've researched, there are not really any current treatments, and in fact, we're just using the ones that we commonly use, like again, what I mentioned, the treatments such as like staying active and eating more healthy. Those are just the common treatments and just medicine. But there isn't really anything specific for the genetic factor aspect. And in fact, this genetic diabetes is called monogenic diabetes and is honestly mostly misdiagnosed. Only about 4 to 5% people get diagnosed with monogenic diabetes. It's usually more people get diagnosed as type 2, which is why there isn't really like any treatments for it. So I also found this chart that has a lot of the genes that can that can increase the risk of diabetes. So yeah, I'm not gonna go over all of them, but I do want to research more about them. So these are like the top 3 that I found really interesting, but again, I do want to explore more about the genes. So there's this one gene, the MTNR1B gene, which happens when it just increases the chances when you're eating late at night. So according to this article that I read, insulin sensitivity is the lowest at night, and melatonin receptors in the pancreatic islets modulate insulin secretion from beta cells. So basically, this is saying that it's not really good to eat at night because of just the low insulin sensitivity. So it can increase our sugar levels at night. And what they suggest is like eating dinner earlier would really help with that risk. Or even not eating breakfast too early can help. There's also the IRS1 gene, which codes for which codes for a key protein in the insulin stimulated signal pathway. And this also helps, this kind of associates with insulin resistance. So basically, this is kind of preventing insulin from being created. Yeah, so basically, in order to help with this gene, they suggest eating more vitamin D just to increase the insulin sensitivity from the insulin receptor. Also, just having like a weight loss diet can help as well. Basically, just having a specific diet can help with this gene. And then the HEX gene is associated with having a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes, because this protein can interact with signaling molecules that play a role in embryonic development of the liver, thyroid, and pancreas. So for this one, it's basically kind of impairing that glucose stimulated insulin response. So it was just very difficult for the body to kind of recognize what's going on and how to increase insulin in the system. Again, I definitely need to look up more and like research more about these genes. And then, so technically the question is just, are genetics to blame, And I did see that African Americans are the most common group to get diabetes. among other people of color. So like there's we would include like Latinx community, Pacific Islander, Native American. So out of all those, it seems like African Americans are the most common. However, I did see that the chances of getting diabetes are equally the same for all the groups. However, it's the way culture and just like health diets and health and lifestyle has impacted that race that makes an impact. So basically, I kind of learned that like there is like a contribution of culture added on to the genetics, because not only is our genetic makeup different for each culture, so like for example the way we store our body fat is different in different races, but also just the things we eat and the lifestyle that we have can contribute to that risk factor. So it kind of all goes together: genetics, race and ethnic groups, and just culture overall all help kind of like increase the chances. I definitely want to look up more about this information for my project. I think like it's just really important for me to kind of understand more on why these factors have helped increase the chances. I think that it will be really interesting to know more about that, and just kind of like see overall, like in the whole world, what groups are more prevalent in each world and how we can probably raise more awareness to those groups that don't know much about diabetes and how to help them. But yeah, that is all for now. Thank you for listening.